The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So we've got some news, a lot of things that we need to catch up on. A lot of things have transpired since the last time we've talked. A lot of interesting conversations surrounding the team have come up. We've addressed some of them briefly. I think we're going to expound upon that today. Owner Josh Harris talked and addressed the media today, had some interesting things to say. I think one definitive thing was garnered from this press conference, maybe two, actually. We're going to discuss those today. So among the big topics, stadium, new uniforms, or old uniforms, however you want to phrase it, name change or lack thereof, and Myles Garrett. And I think that's where we're going to start today's conversation, is Myles Garrett, and then we'll get to all of the house cleaning topics. Myles Garrett requested a trade formally from the Cleveland Browns. Now, I want to make this abundantly clear. He doesn't control anything in this situation. He's under contract, and this is not the NBA, right? In the NBA, players can dictate. You see what Jimmy Butler's doing, and we're going to have a great discussion tonight. We're going to pretty much have an all-association Louie T Network podcast episode tonight at 8. I've already got it queued up, ready to go. We're going to talk about that Luka trade. We're going to talk about the De'Aaron Fox trade, and Jimmy's going to get traded as well before the trade deadline. And we're going to have a large NBA discussion, so we're going to do that tonight. But this is not the NBA. And NFL players are not able to force their way out of a situation like NBA players are, all right? The NBA players have a lot more leverage. They're in much more power than NFL players are, for that matter. Any other sports players are. And so Myles Garrett can be a malcontent. And we've seen guys be malcontents like Antonio Brown, for instance, in Pittsburgh, and force your way out of a situation, or even Stephon Diggs in Buffalo kind of was a malcontent. They wanted to turn the reins over to Josh Allen and not have to worry about this receiver constantly chirping in his ear. So they moved on from him. But that's a team choice, right? If a team says, we're not trading you, a la the Cincinnati Bengals with Carson Palmer, a la the Pittsburgh Steelers with Le'Veon Bell, you can either play football or you can go home, right? But remember, there are repercussions for your actions. If you decide to go home, that comes at a cost. But guess what? You don't get to dictate what you will or won't do, or who you will or won't play for. So I need to make this abundantly clear. Myles Garrett can want out. Doesn't mean he's going to get out, right? Their GM, Andrew Berry, has said now 2 times on record, we are not interested in trading Myles Garrett. We're not even entertaining phone calls. You know the phone's going to ring because he's officially made it clear, I want out. All right. He's released a statement saying he wants out of Cleveland. We knew he wanted out of Cleveland because he's tired of losing. The man has just done something no other player in NFL history has done. And that's starting off your career with 4 straight seasons of 14 sacks or more. No other player has ever done it. And I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he said he doesn't want to be Joe Thomas. And I said, you know what? That is the perfect way to sum it up. I couldn't have said it any better. He doesn't want to be Joe Thomas, a loyal member of the Cleveland Browns, plays a Hall of Fame career there, but is a lovable loser. He doesn't want to do that. And that's where his career is trending right now, because they don't have a quarterback. They're in a position to maybe draft one, but there's no guarantee that that guy's going to be any good. Right? And so who knows what the future looks like in Cleveland? If I'm the Browns, I would do the same thing. I'm not trading him because you can't get equal value for a star like Myles Garrett at a premium position like edge rusher. Everyone's looking for that kind of game changer on that side of the football, and you've already got one. If you could just find a quarterback, you've got a chance to do some special things. That's a good defense over there, by the way. A lot of good defensive parts, but none greater than Myles Garrett and the impact that he has every single Sunday, Monday, Saturday, and Thursday that he does play. So again, if I'm the Browns, I don't give a damn what Myles Garrett wants. I'm not trading him. That said, he wants out. And if you're a team with assets and the ability to make an offer, you should be hitting their line right about now. And you check in now so Andrew Berry can tell you we're not interested and hang up on you. And you're like, that's cool. You check in again let's call it late February as you head into the combine. You check in again. He's going to tell you the same thing probably. He hangs up on you again. You go check on him at the combine. You go over to his little post and you say, hey, Andrew, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Just checking in to see how things are going with Myles Garrett. Have you had any conversations with him? Are you thinking about trading him again? I don't know. Just wanted to check in and see how you were feeling. And if he tells you the same thing, cool. I'll check back in right before the draft, right? Free agency happens. Now it's draft time. I got some picks. I got some players. Hey, what says you? I'm asking you as a fan. I know Adam Peters is going to do his due diligence. I don't anticipate the Browns trading Myles Garrett again. It doesn't make any sense from their standpoint. It makes all the sense in the world from Myles Garrett's standpoint to ask for a trade. Makes all the sense in the world. Does not make any sense currently for the Cleveland Browns. None whatsoever. That said, if he makes this situation untenable and they get to a point where they say, you know what? He doesn't want to be here and we don't want to hold him hostage. Maybe ultimately they get to a place where they are willing to listen. I'm asking you as a fan, are you all in on going to get Myles Garrett? It's going to cost a ton if they make him available. It would literally turn into the biggest auction we've ever seen in NFL history because somebody's going to give up 3 first-round picks, and I think that's the maximum a team is allowed to give up. 3 1s, you're going to see some 2s, probably like a 4th or a 5th, and you may even get a player thrown in as well. That's how much Myles Garrett is going to command. Are you willing to part ways with what it's going to take to get it done? And the beauty of this situation is it doesn't really matter like how many picks you have like in the first round this year. Nobody wants multiple first round picks in this year's draft. It's about future draft capital. It's about giving me one this year, giving me one next year, giving me one the year after that. I'll take your 2 this year. I want a 2 next year, right? I want a 4 in the draft after that, right? So it's about giving them draft capital from now until the future. Sort of like what they had to do to get Deshaun Watson. They paid for that for multiple drafts over. But this is next level shit here we're talking. So are you willing to part ways with what it's going to take to get a real, true generational talent? We can remove the air quotes. He is a generational talent, not the guys that everybody likes to throw the generational talent tag on. He's a true generational talent. I just told you he did something no other player has done in NFL history. He's a real generational talent, not the one that they lied to us and told us Chase Young was. No, not that type of generational talent. A real generational talent. That is Myles Garrett. Are you willing to part ways with 3 first-round picks, which I think is the maximum you can give up at one time? Are you willing to part ways with 2 or 3 number 2 picks? So 3 second-round picks. So are you willing to sit in timeout for the next 3 drafts, first and second round, Are you willing? Because that's what all in means for Myles Garrett. Are you willing to sit in timeout? When they start talking first and second round draft choices in the next 3 drafts, when they start talking about those high-level prospects and they snap your hand and say, you go to timeout, that's a no-no. You go sit in the corner, face the wall, and don't turn around until the 3rd round. Are you comfortable with that? If the answer is yes, then you can do business and you can have yourself a Myles Garrett. If the answer is no, then you probably should not be engaging in any conversation surrounding Myles Garrett. He's that type of player. And if I'm the Browns, I'm commanding that type of haul for him. If you're not willing to sit in timeout for the first 2 rounds of each of the next 3 drafts, don't talk to me. If you're not willing to do that, don't have the Myles Garrett conversation. Okay? Some of you think this is Madden, where you'll just give them something you don't want. Hey, I remember back in the day when we had, what was the name of the damn safety from the Giants? Why can't I think of his damn name? Y'all know who the hell I'm talking about. And every time we wanted a player, you would try to throw him in a draft. Oh, just give them him and in a 1st round or him in a 2nd round pick, and we're square. Hey, let's give them Daron Payne and a 1st round pick. That should get the job done. You a damn lie. Landon Collins, that was his damn name. Every time y'all wanted something, throw Landon Collins in a trade like somebody wanted his ass. Hey, give him Daron Payne and a 1st round pick. That'll get the job done. Bullshit. 3 1s, 3 2s, and Daron Payne. If you're not willing to do that, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Cleveland isn't going to give him away. I can assure you of that. I can assure you of that. That's a Band-Aid they don't want to rip off. And if they have to rip it off and they know it's going to hurt, they're going to make it hurt for the team that's going to make the trade. So again, ask yourself, what are you willing to do? How far are you willing to go? If you're willing to go there, if you're all in, that's what all in looks like. Sitting in timeout for at least the bare minimum, the next 2 drafts, the first 2 rounds. That's the bare minimum. I think you're sitting in timeout for the next 3 drafts in the first 2 rounds. If you're not willing to do that, then you're not willing to go all in for Myles Garrett. You're going to have to try to find your own. Obviously, he was the number 2 pick in the draft, if I'm not mistaken, for a reason. Or was he the number 1 pick his year? Either way, 1 or 2, wherever the hell he was taken, I want to say he was the number 1 pick in his draft. He was that for a reason. Those don't grow on trees. You're not going to find Myles Garrett at 37 overall in the draft. You're not going to find Myles Garrett in the 3rd round at 86 overall. You're not going to find Myles Garrett there. You can find a really good player in the 3rd round. You find a really good player. You're not finding a generational talent in the 2nd round or the 3rd round. Okay. Teams don't make a mistake and pass on a guy that ultimately ends up being one of the best to ever do it. That generally doesn't happen at a position like edge rusher. Tom Brady is the exception to the rule. Everybody will bring up Tom Brady. Oh, well, Tom Brady's different. Tom Brady's different. Kobe Bryant's different. Right? Generally, teams don't miss on that type of prospect, but you can't ever measure what's in here. Right? That's what they missed on Tom Brady. That's what they missed on Kobe Bryant. Those guys were different here. Those guys were different here. Myles Garrett has everything. Physically, he looks the part. He steps off the bus and you know, oh shit, it's going to be a long day. Like Abdul Carter, he's cool. He don't look like Myles Garrett though. Tell you that much. He ain't 6'5", 270. moves like he's 240, that ain't Abdul Carter. He might be more Von Miller than he is, Myles Garrett. It's levels to this shit, as I always tell y'all. It's levels to this shit. So again, I'm going to tell you like this. There's certain positions where you're not going to find generational talents. You can find a generational linebacker in the 5th round, the 7th round. Linebackers are easy to find. You can find a generational running back in the 3rd or the 4th round. Running backs are easy to find. You can find a generational defensive tackle in the 2nd or the 3rd round. Defensive tackles are relatively easy to find. The elite ones, though, you probably got to spend a top 15 pick. I've been adamant about that. The ones that can do both, rush the quarterback and stop the run, normally those are top 15 guys. But again, find a defensive tackle. But those premium positions, edge rusher, corner, left tackle, quarterback, those 4 in particular, tackle, quarterback, edge rusher, corner. You want elite, game-changing stuff, generational talent stuff, you're probably going to have to draft it in the 1st round, more specifically, top 10. This is your chance, because you see where we're going now, right? We had our shot at a generational, and he turned out to be a basic in Chase Young. We swung and we missed, okay? We swung and we missed. Now we got a generational quarterback, and we're never going back. So now that you got one of those, guess what? You're not going to draft high enough to be able to draft one of these Myles Garrett types. So this is your chance. If the Browns are listening, which right now they're not. But it's going to take a lot. And my question to you, and again, these are the tough conversations that you got to have with yourself. Because a lot of people want to throw around, hey, give them Daron Payne in a 1st round pick. The Browns ain't taking that shit. Yeah, you can give me Daron Payne. Throw 3 2s and 3 1s on top of that. Then you got a deal. Or Jonathan Allen, if that's what you want to do. But it's not going to be 1 1st round pick, a 2nd round pick, 2 4s, and a player. We talking about the best pass rusher through the first 4 seasons of an NFL career in NFL history that could potentially be on the block. We ain't talking about some Joe Schmo on the block, some basic random pass rusher. So again, I'm going to ask you, are you all in? Because that is what all in looks like. Are you all in on Myles Garrett? You can't just say, hey, go get Myles Garrett. Because we've seen trades in the past where we went, that's all it took? Like, that's all it took to get that player? Yeah, that's all it took to get a 32-year-old fill in the blank, or a 29-year-old fill in the blank, or a 30-year-old fill in the blank at the trade deadline. That's all it took. That's a far cry from getting a pass rusher, a premium position player in his prime. We're talking about 4 years. That's all Myles Garrett has played. This man can't be any older than 26 years old. You're not getting him for a deal that we look back on and say, that's all it took? Nah, not this time. And again, if I'm Cleveland, I'm not even considering trading this man. Because in my mind, if I'm Cleveland, all we got to do is get the right quarterback. That's all. That's what they're telling themselves. We just won, 10, 11 games the year before and made the playoffs. With a combination of DTR, Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, and one more quarterback. I can't remember who it was. at quarterback. We just made the playoffs with that collection of guys leading us to the postseason. So in my mind, if I'm Cleveland, still got a really good defense. As long as you got Myles Garrett and you got Denzel Ward and all that, you still got a really good defense as long as you got that crew still. Find us a quarterback. Nick Chubb will be fully healthy next year. And you keep building around Jerry Jeudy and some of the weapons that you've amassed. And you say, hey, we got a shot to turn this thing around. And the only way that happens is if Myles Garrett is still there. So I'm not trading him personally if I'm the Browns. I don't give a shit what he says. But, excuse me, we've seen stranger things happen. And we've seen situations go from bad to worse. And organizations say, you know what? To hell with it. He doesn't want to be here. We're not going to keep him here. Let's see what we can get for him. But the difference here is there's no desperation on the part of the Browns. They don't have to do anything. So if they're trading him, they only trade him if they get a deal they cannot refuse. And they get to dictate terms. You don't get to offer me what you want, and then I just have to take it. He's under contract for a very long time, I may add. He's not going anywhere. He just signed an extension, if I'm not mistaken. So they got him under contract. And if I'm the Browns and I am entertaining, I dictate terms. I tell you what you have to give me. And if you're not comfortable with it, hang up the phone and don't bother calling me back. Or you call me back when you are ready to make a deal. And by then, maybe the price has gone up. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using other teams and tell them, hey, you calling about Myles. I got 3 1s, 3 2s, 2 3s on the table right now. What says you? That's why I said this will turn into the biggest bidding war we've ever seen in NFL history. If you're not comfortable with that, you don't have the stomach for that, then you don't want Myles Garrett. And that's okay. You build through the draft. We've talked about this already. But he's special. He's special. He's different. He wrecks games by himself. We have nothing even remotely close to a Myles Garrett on this roster. Nothing close. But guess what? We're not alone. Okay, we're not alone. There's probably 3 or 4 teams that have a guy similar to Myles Garrett that can single-handedly wreck a game. So we're a part of the majority in the NFL who don't have a guy like this. Not the minority, right? The Browns are in the minority. There are only a handful of game records on the defensive side of football. Only a handful. One just retired 2 years ago. Or 1 year ago. There aren't many left. To have a chance to get that kind of a guy in the prime of his career, meaning you would probably have him for the next 7, 8 years playing top-notch football. Because even when he takes a step back, he's still going to be better than half of the league. Think about Bruce Smith at the end of his career, still getting to the quarterback. If you're that good, you're still going to be able to get to the quarterback. Anyway. I just thought I'd start off with that because so many people are like, hey, Adam Peters, go get him. Oh, yeah? What you willing to give up? What you willing to part ways with? Again, this ain't Madden. You can't force a trade to happen. You can't veto the computer saying, no, I'm not taking that trade. Oh, yes, you are. This ain't Madden. You don't get to override the computer saying, no, that's not a fair trade. I'm not taking that. Oh, no. Yes, you are. Boop. You don't get to press a button. And Myles Garrett is on your team. This is real life. And if you want Myles Garrett, you're going to have to pay Myles Garrett prices. And boy, are they steep. And again, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to some house cleaning, if you will. So Josh Harris spoke today, and he had some really interesting things to say. I think these are the most definitive statements we've heard surrounding the name and the uniforms, or the look of the team, the branding, if you will. This is the most definitive statements we've heard on that probably since February of 2022, when the team officially converted over to the Washington Commanders, when we were the football team and Doug Williams sat on then FedEx Field on the Today Show and told Melvin that we were now the Washington Commanders. So we're going to talk about what Josh Harris said here in a second, but I want to give some context to the conversations that we're about to have, because I had brought some of this stuff up briefly to you guys last week, but it was kind of in passing. I knew we'd kind of circle back and talk about it at greater depth, because that's where we are now at this point of the season, where we can start to have these kind of conversations. And I knew it'd come back up. I didn't expect it to come up this quickly and be this dynamic of a conversation, but here we are. So with that said, I want to play you a clip from the voice of the Commanders. So Bram Weinstein has done a phenomenal job of calling games this year. He's been, one of those really influential voices that, we've kind of been the soundtrack of our season, so to speak. When we had a big play at the end of a game, he goes nuts. I talked to you guys about what Kevin Sheehan said. Now, I did it in passing, and I said one thing about Kevin Sheehan is generally he doesn't say anything like just off the cuff. It's usually not frivolous. If he's throwing it out there, it's because he's got it on good information. Over the years, he's been more right than he's been wrong. Well, I was saying this one didn't make sense to me when he was saying they're going to change the name. Something's going to get done with the name. And I was like, yeah, I don't feel that. I don't sense that. There's so many other things that have to get done first before you can even start entertaining a name change. And I want you to take a listen to Bram Weinstein and what he said on his podcast last week. And in regards to what Kevin Sheehan said and the name changing, and it comes full circle because we got confirmation from Josh Harris today, and we'll expound upon that. But the next voice you're going to hear is that of Bram Weinstein on his podcast. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Stadium is what's next. Like,
yes.
All of this discussion of
right.
They might do this or they might do that. This is why it's not that high on the priority list. The stadium is what's next. That's the thing that's in play. That's the thing that they got to get the DC city officials to agree to do. They have to figure out who's going to finance what of it. And then hopefully it'll all go through in the next 6 to 12 months. They could start the process of demolition. And then we have to talk about what the thing looks like. So their plate is full. And for the people who sent me, one person sent me, he liked Red Wings. And I wrote back, I go, they're not Red Wolves because of trademark issues. And, I hate to break it to you, even if you do like that, I don't think they're going to get that. So this is what stemmed by, it's not frustration. It's just, guys, it's not happening. Kevin, please reveal your source. If you're going to say something like that, reveal your source, because my sources have not even hinted that any of that stuff is happening. And now I'm getting an avalanche of people sending me drawings again of things that they want to have in there. And that's the other thing. I have, just like the last group, I have no say in any of this. None.
Right.
None.
Well, the other side of this too, though, is it could have been something very something as simple as, remember Magic was just casually even talking, about a different kind of brand. Remember he was doing that in interviews and stuff like that. So this could also just be old news too, that
yes.
Kevin was also bringing up as well, which wouldn't surprise me either, that this isn't breaking. It's just, it's on the list. It's not a priority at the moment at all whatsoever.
No.
So Bram pretty much said, look, Kevin, cite your sources, bro. I haven't listened to Kevin Sheehan in probably 2 years now. But, stuff ends up on my timeline because That's what happens, right? In this day of social media, day and age of social media and accessibility, stuff ends up on my timeline. And so I heard what Kevin said. And, you know, when somebody like Kevin, who has a lot of influence within the fan base, says something like that, people listen. It gets the conversation going. This is an excitable fan base right now. This is the most alive and outside this fan base has been since 2012, right? And this blows 2012 out of the water. This is the most excitable this fan base has been easily in 30 years, without question. So any talk of name, any talk of jerseys, any talk of stadium is going to get people talking and excited. But Bram said, look, man, Kevin, you got to cite your sources if you're going to come out with some shit like that, because now you got people doing the thing that they were doing back in 2021, which is sending mock-ups of this look of a name, and this is the jersey combination you can have with this name, and Bram is like, bro, I don't want any of that smoke because they're not changing the name. He said they got the stadium to worry about. They got so many other things on their plate, and the first thing is the stadium. And I've said that already, and I said that to you guys. Last week, I said it and I reiterated. I said, the stadium comes first. If you're rebranding, you're not going to do it in this stadium, at Northwest Stadium. You're not rebranding Northwest Stadium. Do you know how expensive it is to rebrand? Change all of the scenery in the stadium from Commanders to whatever the new name would be. Do you know how much cost that would be? That's a very inefficient way to spend your money if you're the owner of the Commanders. So I can tell you a name change isn't happening anytime soon, if at all. And so let's fast forward to today. Josh Harris spoke at his press conference. And you know what he said? He said, we're sticking with the name Commanders. Now, he didn't say forever, but it was a definitive, and I'm glad he did this so people can just stop with the name. Just stop. I know you don't have to love it. Hell, you don't even have to like it. But quit. The name isn't going anywhere. It is what it is at this point. Either you're going to support the team as the Commanders. You don't like the name? Call them the Skins. Who cares? We're all rooting for the same team. You don't have to love the name, but it is their name now. And until otherwise notified, it's going to continue to be their name. And that's essentially what Josh Harris said today, is we're not changing the name. I could tell he wanted to put that to rest. Again, is it the end of that conversation? No, it may come up in 10 years when they finally have this stadium done. They've got to get this stadium. You've got to find where it's going to end up being first so they can break ground. Then you got to figure out what the hell it's going to look like. Then you got to actually build it. This is going to take some time. How much time? I don't know. But once all of that takes place and transpires, then they can turn their attention quietly behind closed doors, out of the public eye, because he said the name isn't changing. So now you can put all of that to rest. And after you break ground on a new stadium and you know what it's going to look like, and they're already building, right? Demolitions have taken place and they've already started, to build this stadium, this state-of-the-art stadium, wherever it's going to be. Then if you want to change the name, you can start thinking about ideas, start putting in place patents and trademarks and trying to, get everything that you need in place to make it come to fruition, which is going to be hard to do on the hush because we live in a day and age where people are always snooping around, they're checking, and that's public records, right? That's public information, patents and trademarks and things of that nature. So if somebody puts out, Josh Harris's group puts out a patent or a trademark for this name, then people are like, hey, well, maybe they're going to change the name. So again, at the end of the day, Commanders isn't going anywhere. So get comfortable. You don't have to like it. You don't have to love it. You don't even have to like it, but it's not going anywhere. Then there's the conversation about the jerseys. People have been asking about, are we going to get an alternate jersey? I've said, I don't know if they're going to do the alternate jersey thing, right? I'd love an alt jersey. We already have an alt jersey. We can have another one. I'm more interested in a throwback, right? Because for all the people who want the old logo back, the old name, that's not coming back. It's not. But what you can do if you want a piece of the past, you want a slice of the past, that's how you get it. Once a year, we should be wearing a throwback jersey like everybody else around the league. The Eagles are wearing their Kelly Greens. The Giants are wearing their 80s Giants helmet with the dope look, with the Parcells, the championship jerseys that they had with Parcells, right? That's what we should be trying to do. We should be trying to get a slice of the past. And I think you got two options. You've either got the 1970s yellow helmet, gold helmet, whatever you want to call it. It's really a yellow helmet with a red R, with the white backdrop, with the red R, right? With the stripe down the middle, white tops, burgundy numbers, with the yellow pants, with the stripe down the side, and the yellow striped socks. Clean as can be, right? They wore those back in 2007, if I'm not mistaken. Wore those as a throwback back in 2007, I believe. That was the year the Giants won the Super Bowl. Because they were 0-2. We had them on the ropes in week 3, and we let them off the hook, and we had those uniforms on. I'll never forget. Or, and this is the one I advocate for personally, because there will be some out there that said, you know what the R stands for, right? There's going to still be those people that exist. Just go with the spear. That 2000, and I want to say, because Darryl Green wore them, so it couldn't be any later than 02. Darryl Green's final year was 02. If I'm not mistaken, because Marty came in and everybody quit pretty much. Everybody retired. All the old heads retired and got the hell out of Dodge. And I think Marty came in 03, if I'm not mistaken. So let me see. Let me rewind that. I think Marty might have been 01. I think Marty was 01. Yeah, pretty sure Marty was 01. Then you had Spurrier for 2 and 3, and then Gibbs 2.0 was 04. So I think Darryl Green's last year was 01. So it might have been the 2001 season, because Marty pretty much ran everybody out of Dodge in 01. All the old heads didn't like how Marty practiced. He was running Oklahoma drills and shit like that. So at the end of the day, the all burgundy, the deep burgundies with the spear, the silver spear on the helmet, with the gold pants, that's my choice personally. But you can't go wrong with either one. Neither one has Redskin imagery on it. That's how you get a slice of the past, to me. Now, with that said, there's also been a conversation about getting back to our roots, and Josh Harris talked about that today. But before we get to that, I want you to hear a conversation that was on the Grant and Danny show. They talked about a possible switch at uniform, with one of the uniforms in particular, because honestly, and if they decide to switch up both uniforms, I'm cool with that, right? Just the entire look of the uniforms, I have no issues with that. But the home uniforms, the burgundy tops, gold, they're not the issue. The issue is the road uniforms. When they wear those, those white uniforms don't look like Commander uniforms. They don't look like they belong to a Washington football team, right? They got gray and black, and the burgundy is maroon. The shit's just off. Like any purist, of a fan would look at those uniforms and say, this is the problem right here. You can get down with the burgundy tops and the gold bottoms You can get down with the all blacks, right? I like the alt uniforms now. The all blacks have grown on me. I wasn't a big fan of them initially. They've grown on me. But those white uniforms on the road don't look like Washington uniforms at all. I want you to listen to Grant and Danny talk about the uniforms. And after this conversation, we will talk about what Josh Harris had to say, and then we will have our own conversation about this. Take a listen.
The story that has trickled out this week is that the Commanders are going to be tweaking their uniforms, and that came from a member of the team's employee, right, from their broadcast crew. This is something that we've heard rumblings about since the fall. We've been told they're trying to go back to their roots a little more, something that looks like the early 90s Joe Gibbs Redskins Super Bowl uniforms, and that would obviously be pretty well received, I'd say, by the fan base. But, Danny, let me ask you this. If you were in charge of this project, which has been going on for an extended period of time behind the scenes, with this ownership group, what would you want the uniform tweaks to be?
I want the 1991 jersey combo. The first thing is I would say, what did Joe Gibbs do? They wore white at home. Wear white at home. White tops, burgundy pants with the old school burgundy gold and white stripes on the side. White jersey, again, with the burgundy gold and white piping on the sleeves. That's the time for celebration. That's when they were great. Road jerseys, white pants, single red stripe on the side, burgundy tops with the yellow, with the gold, white, and then the burgundy piping on the sides. Done and done. Helmet's got the stripes. Let's rock and roll. We got to change out the logo. We'll fix that block W when we get a chance to do it. But first things first, 1991 jerseys. That's when it was perfect. Make it so again.
I love that. I'm not going to add a whole lot. I will just say that I do think once a year they should be wearing throwback jerseys that are actual Redskins jerseys. Now, I'm not a crazy person, right? I understand they're never going to have that Redskins insignia or logo on their uniform again. I'm not suggesting that. But I don't know why they can't have the R as an example, which is not offensive. It's a letter, right? So, like if you remember the Jason Campbell, Chris Cooley team for the 75th anniversary, they had these beautiful yellow helmets with the burgundy R with the white circle. I loved this kit. They had the yellow and burgundy stripes on the sleeves on the white jersey with the burgundy numbers. I think you could wear that as a throwback. I think they could go back to, really, if they wanted to play it safe, the uniforms that they wore every year for their homecoming game that were like the kind of, I guess you'd say actual gold pants, because the gold pants are like more of a mustard yellow, right? Mm-hmm. But those gold pants with the deep dark burgundy and the very basic like gold numbers. Think about what Robert Griffin or Kirk Cousins wore for those years where they had like the brown helmets that were supposed to be like leather helmets. I think you could wear that once a year and it would look awesome. I don't see why they couldn't wear the throwback jerseys from, maybe it was the 70th anniversary, one of my favorites ever, with like the would have been like not an arrowhead, but almost like the feathered. What would you call this?
I thought it was the spear. The spear look.
Spear is the word I'm looking for. Thank you. A spear with the feather. I don't know why you couldn't do that. I mean, I'm watching the Chiefs Super Bowl against the Eagles from a couple of years ago with the arrowhead and KC on their helmet, right? Like that burgundy, deep burgundy that they wore for that throwback year, I think would play. But there's got to be a way for them to actually have, a true throwback uniform to the Redskins that I would like to see them implement. Whatever changes.
All right, so let me make an amendment to something I said earlier. Myles Garrett he just turned 29. Okay, I had to look it up because, I say some shit, don't fact check it, and then somebody, well, actually, Louie, and that's what was going to happen. That's probably still going to happen in the comment section after this thing uploads, but he's 29. He turned 29 in December. I think I said his first 4 years, he's had 4 straight years of 14 sacks or more. That's the first time that's ever happened in NFL history. He's had 7 straight years of double-digit sacks, and he's eclipsed 100 sacks. I was watching Hard Knocks the other day. I still got like 2 or 3 episodes left, and he eclipsed 100 sacks in the game. I want to say it was against the Bengals. Of course, they lost the game, but he eclipsed 100 sacks. He's got 102 sacks already in his career in just 8 years, in 8 seasons. I got to imagine he's one of the fastest. Might not be the fastest, but one of the fastest to do that. Being that he's that much older than I thought he was like 26. He's 29, so it's 3 more years. May not be as costly. I still think you're sitting out of the first and second round each of the next 2 drafts. May not cost you 3 first rounders, but it's going to cost you 2 1s and 2 2s without question. I think that's where the conversation starts. And again, you get other teams inside that conversation bidding, it may cost you an additional first round pick. Maybe not an additional second, but you're sitting out of the first round at least the next 2 drafts. First and second round, excuse me. Again, if you're not willing to do that, then you probably shouldn't be having a Myles Garrett conversation. That said, let's talk about what was said there by Grant and Danny. So we had heard rumblings and grumblings about the team wanting to get back to their roots, meaning they wanted to get to back to where we were when we were a championship franchise. We all know what the championship look is. White tops, burgundy bottoms. They want to. So my thing was, and my thing has always been on the topic of the jersey, has always been they didn't need to change the Washington football team uniforms. Those were perfect, right? All they did was remove Redskins from the front. They put Washington there and go about your business. Change the helmet if you like, and that was it. That's all that needed to be done. They didn't need to do anything else. They could have kept everything else exactly the same. They didn't need to change anything, and I think most fans would have been okay with that. So, excuse me, if I'm Josh Harris in this group, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you want to get back to a look that brings us closer to our past and you want to modernize them a little bit, you can make a tweak here or there, but just give us the uniforms back. Just give us the uniforms back. To me, that's the simplest and most easy fix. Just put the uniforms back to where they were back in 2021. You want to change out Washington for Commanders, knock yourself out. Have at it. But at the end of the day, that to me is the easiest fix. Go back to the burgundy bottoms, stripe on the side, right? Tops, burgundy numbers, right? Like stripes on the sleeves. Let's call it a day. Like, it's not hard. And if you want to have the current Commanders burgundy tops, gold pants as an alt uniform to go along with the black ones that you already have as alt uniforms, keep them. Keep them. But get rid of the white ones altogether. You can bring back the traditional white tops, burgundy bottoms. You can go back to the traditional burgundy tops and white bottoms. You want to sub out the white pants for gold pants, knock yourself out. No one's going to stop you, right? But to me, that's kind of where they should be trending. And then you can bring back the all whites, right? The all white alts with the stripe down the side on the pants. Those crispy all white that we used to like. So to me, that makes the most sense. And I agree with them from the standpoint of we should have a throwback uniform that we wear once a year. That makes the most sense to me. I can't speak to what they want to do or what they should do, but that's what I would do if I were them. Anyhow, I digress. What says you? Right? Leave it down in the comment section. Can't wait to read your responses. Another quick thing while we're here. This has been a really good offseason already for the Commanders. Without having done anything from a roster standpoint or anything of the sort, by just retaining all of their stuff. At one point, we thought realistically we could lose our assistant GM, Lance Newmark. We thought we could lose our offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury. We weren't sure. I didn't think he was going anywhere other than Chicago. But if the Cincinnati job opened up, I said, Ben Johnson might take that one, and now Chicago would be reeling, looking for someone, and then Cliff would, I think, come into focus. So glad that that didn't take place. We thought we could lose Cliff. He's not going anywhere. And, you know, David Blau became, and Tavita Pritchard, both were sought after. Tavita has interviewed for the Jacksonville OC job. And obviously teams were interested in plucking David Blau from the staff as an assistant quarterbacks coach and making him a quarterbacks coach. And Washington blocked. So in essence, we're coming back with the exact same staff, with the same front office intact, and we're going to get to run it back for a second consecutive year. And that is music to all of our ears. And you buy yourself another year because, again, we don't know what's going to transpire next year, how this thing's going to go. But assuming that the success is equal to or greater than this season's success, you're going to lose some guys, and you want to be positioned to be able to replace them internally. They've set themselves up to be able to do exactly that. So we get another year, Lance Newmark, who we think is an excellent eye for talent. He'll be here another year to help us bring in some talented football players to help bolster this roster. We will have Cliff Kingsbury linking up with our star quarterback, superstar quarterback, for a second consecutive year. So there isn't this turnover and there isn't change and a new offense that he's got to learn. And I'm hoping, and this is the hope, because at some point Cliff is going to want to become a head coach again, and he's going to take it, right? That opportunity is going to come, and we know that, and we're prepared for that. I'm just hoping that what Cliff has done resonates within the walls of the organization, and the coaches are taking notes. We know you're not going to run the offense exactly the same as Cliff, but I hope the terminology kind of stays somewhat intact. I hope the continuity amongst the other coaches stay intact. And I hope that they're able to keep the language and how things are done intact by just promoting from within. So we're getting a head start, essentially, on building this thing from a foundational standpoint, the way you want to build it. We're getting a head start on that based off of us being able to retain all of our guys. You continue to submit what the Commander standard is. You continue to build what the Commander tag looks like with Lance Newmark staying here. You continue to reiterate the Commander standard by keeping Cliff Kingsbury and David Blau here. And most importantly, you continue the continuity that you were able to build on last year. You continue to build on that this year. The foundation that was set, you continue to build on that. All great things early in this offseason for the Commanders. So another really, fortunate break for us that Lance Newmark didn't get the Jets GM job. They went in a different direction and hired David Mogi. Cliff Kingsbury, by the time our run essentially saved him from, being able to interview for more of these opportunities. And then, we literally ensured that Cliff Kingsbury was going to stay here. It was our success in the postseason coupled with us beating Detroit that fast-tracked everybody hiring because everyone was essentially waiting on Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Once we put them out of the postseason, they got hired practically 2 days later, essentially, and then the rest of the dominoes fell after that. Everybody started hiring their coach after that. So we effectively kept him here by winning in Tampa, winning in Detroit, and getting all the way to the NFC Championship game. By then, there was one job left. That job was the New Orleans Saints, and nobody wants that job. Maybe Kellen Moore wants it. Good for him if he decides to take it. I've already said, Kellen, I wouldn't take that job if I were you. I told Cliff, you're making money here and you're still getting paid from Arizona. You're not hurting for bread and you're not hurting for an opportunity. You'll be Ben Johnson next year if you just stay put. You'll be Ben Johnson next year. Ben Johnson signed a 5-year, $65 million contract. That's $13 million a year for a first-time head coach. That's crazy money. Cliff will be Ben Johnson next year. He'll get to call his shot next year. Just sit tight. Other jobs will open up. Like Cincinnati, for instance. We'll see what happens with Zach Taylor. I'm not wishing that on Zach, but that's a coveted job. He doesn't make it, everybody's going to want to go to Cincinnati. So we'll see what happens. But good to know that we're keeping our stuff. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. Let's get to the comment section. Red Wing 01, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Red Wing 01 writes, I know I said Payne and Allen shouldn't be traded, but if we package one from Garrett, yes, please. Luka trade still doesn't feel real to me. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that on the podcast later on tonight. As soon as I'm done here, I'm going to set that up. But it's going to be at 8 o'clock tonight. We got a lot to talk about on the basketball front. We'll get to the association later on this evening because that's wild. We've never seen anything like it. I don't know if we'll ever see anything like it again. It's still mind-boggling. It still, to me, it still doesn't feel real. Like, you got to be kidding me. Most people didn't think it was real, but we'll get to that later on tonight. If you're trading for Myles Garrett, I would assume that you probably have to throw in a player too. Like, let's just go off the assumption that the asking price is two ones and 2 2s and like a mid-round pick. So let's say a 4th or a 5th thrown in. The separator, the differentiator may be, hey, I can toss in a Daron Payne or a Jonathan Allen to sweeten the pot to get the deal done. That might be the difference between them making the trade. Because I'll tell you this, if they're going to trade him, they're going to trade him outside of the AFC. They're not going to trade him to another AFC team. They're just not going to do it. He's coming to the NFC. So you want to be the team that gets him if you're going to do that. And being that he's 30, not 26, I was tripping, right? And I should have known better because like his draft was like the 2017 or 18 draft. It couldn't be the 18 because that's the one with all the quarterbacks. 2017, let's see, 2015 was the Jameis and Mariota draft, 16 was Jared Goff's draft. 17, I don't think had a quarterback go 1. So he probably was the number 1 overall pick in 2017, if I had to guess. 18 was the Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen draft. So he had to be the 17 draft, and he probably was the number 1 overall pick. So he's been in the league forever, feels like. But I don't know if it'll take 3. If I'm Cleveland, that's what I'm trying to get. Like, if it that's where I would start the conversation. I need 3 1s, 3 2s. Like, you want to discourage people from wanting to make the trade because it's so outlandish what you're asking for. That's how you got to set it up. It's so outlandish, nobody wants to make the deal. And then if somebody is dumb enough to be like, oh, I'll do it, then you take it if you get to that point. But if I'm Cleveland, I'm not trading Myles Garrett. And if I get to the point where I'm considering trading Myles Garrett, I'm setting the price so high that a team is going to have to almost mortgage their future in order to get him. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, midday, Lou, what's going on with you? Glad you could join me on this midday on Monday. Says, I do not want to trade for Myles. Too expensive. It's going to be very expensive. Like AP said, build through the draft. Also, those old new unis are going to be crisp. I think that's the way to go. And okay, so let's talk about what Josh Harris said today. He essentially said they are going to get back to honoring the past. And he said they are going to move towards doing that on the field, which means they're going to do something with these uniforms. They're in the doubt in my mind that next year we're going to see them. And it wouldn't shock me if we get to May, after the draft is done, the dust settles, the smoke clears, and we get a post from the Watch the Commanders account, and it's them teasing a uniform, like a blast to the past, so to speak, as the new uniforms. We've seen teams like Cleveland go back to a traditional look. The Lions got more of a clean, sleek look where they got rid of the black in their color scheme and went back strictly to the white, silver, and I think they call it, forgot the Honolulu blue, right? And I think you could see us kind of get back to that. I'm waiting for the post. I'm going to say it's going to be sometime in May. We'll get that post. And yeah, they're going to look so clean. And we miss them so much. All right. We miss them. Again, the burgundy ones don't bother me. It's the white ones where I go, I'm just not feeling them. Never have, never will. But, you know, it is what it is. You know, I'm not a big complainer. But we all can see that shit doesn't fit. If we lined up all the uniforms and we said, which one doesn't fit? Some might point to the black ones. I'm like, no, those are cool. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing the black alts. All right? That's fine. Leave those alone. Those white ones, though, those ones right there, they don't fit. They will be crispy. They're going to be crispy when they come back. Benjamin Slate, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Benjamin writes, I don't think it takes 3 ones. If they package him with Watson and that horrid contract, still will be significant capital need. Who's taking on Deshaun Watson's contract? No one's doing that. Like, if I want Myles Garrett, I don't want him bad enough to take on Deshaun Watson's contract. That's bad business. So it may not take 3 ones. And again, I kind of walk that back, you know, now kind of seeing where he is age-wise. And again, I should have been able to kind of do the numbers. If I would have just sat and thought about it for a second, I could have, you know, figured out what draft he was in, which was the 2017 draft. And that would have told us how long he was in the league, and that would give us a timeline on his age. But fact is, he's still dominant. He still has had 7 straight years of double-digit sacks. He still had 4 straight years of 14 or more sacks. And I don't see him just falling off a cliff. Now, he's going to be 30 next year, late in the season next year. His birthday's in December. He'll be 30 next year. So that does, you know, bring the price down. Like if he was 26, like I was advocating for, like, there's nothing to talk about. He's 29 though, but still, again, he's one of the few game records on that side of the football that exist in the NFL right now. It's going to cost you a pretty penny to get him. It ain't going to be free, and it damn sure ain't going to be cheap. So, it may not take 3 ones though. To your point, it may not. 2 is the bare minimum. 2, and I think you're going to come off of 2 2s, and I still think you're going to have to give up a mid-round pick as well, a mid-round selection, and you may even have to throw in a player. John Perez, my guy JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. JP writes, Lou, good to see you as always. Likewise, JP. First off, I'm excited for Luke in LA. We're going to talk about that tonight. I knew you were excited. You said there was a birthday gift for you. That's crazy, bro. in LA with LeBron. Already ordered the jersey. I'm pretty sure you did. I'm pretty sure you did. Is he going to wear 7 or 77 in LA? That's the question. Garrett is going to cost a haul, but he's worth it. I think AP should at least call and ask. He will. Just like every other, GM in the league is interested is going to pick up the phone and see if they're, even willing to listen and entertain offers, which right now they're not there yet, and they won't get there until, close to the draft. Again, I always tell you, deadlines spur action, right? If you don't love this year's draft, if you're the Cleveland Browns, then you don't even need to make the deal before the draft this year. You can make it for next year, right? So you would do the deal after the draft, right? Because if you don't want an additional first round pick in this year, like if you don't love this year's crop of talent, but as a GM, you're already thinking about next year's crop, and you're like, man, next year's going to be loaded. Then you tell yourself, I don't need a first round pick this year, an additional one. I got the number 2 pick in the draft. I'm cool with not double dipping this year. Don't need another first round pick. Don't love the talent that exists in this year's draft to the point where I want another first round pick this year. But I would love to have an additional first round pick next year and the year after that and so forth and so forth. So it'll all depend on how they feel about this year's draft. If you're really considering moving him, you love this year's draft, or at least the first round of it, first 2 rounds of it, you think there's a ton of talent within the first 60, picks or so, then you make the deal before the draft this year. If you don't love the top end talent in this year's draft, you just wait till next year. So you would make the deal after the draft, and then you could move him, right? And some team may have gone into the draft thinking they were going to get an edge rusher. They didn't. Now they're a little bit more desperate. You can then maybe jack the price up a little bit more. That could also work against you because a team that might have been desperate going into the draft then landed themselves an edge rusher. Now they're not willing to give you what they were willing to give you before the draft. So it could go both ways. But I don't think they really start entertaining phone calls if they get to a point where they want to move them until right before the draft. Infamous 2K, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Infamous 2K writes, Myles is 29 and is a free agent in 2027, so we'd have to sign him to an extension after just 1 year. I'll pass on him. 29 is the bigger thing there. If he's a free agent in 2027, you'd have to give him an extension. But again, like those types of things, if he's still being the productive Myles Garrett that we've seen, you don't care about giving him an extension. That's the same conversation around Garrett Wilson. Like, if you trade for DK Metcalf or Garrett Wilson, guess what you're going to have to do? Garrett Wilson in particular, like DK is on the same deal, I would assume, as Terry McLaurin. So, because they were in the same draft class, they were both, non-first round picks. DK was a late second, Terry was a third. And I think they both got extensions that same year, right? So my guess is their contracts will be up at the same time. Barring one signed a longer deal than the other, doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, if you traded for DK, you'd have to pay him at some point. And if you trade for Garrett Wilson, that's the reason the Jets would even entertain trading him, is because they got to make a decision on him. They got to pay him. And either you get something for him if you're not planning on paying him, or you got to extend him. And maybe you don't want to give up the money that it's going to cost to extend him. Either way, they got a decision to make. And if you're trading for Myles Garrett Wilson, you got to pay him. You got to trade for him, give up the capital, and you got to pay him. No different here, right? No difference here. And again, you know what you're getting, so you're willing to give it up. But again, are you willing to part ways with what it's going to take? I think the draft capital is of more concern than the money. The money isn't the issue. The money rarely is the money the issue. It's the compensation. It's the draft capital. That's what's important. That's the cheap labor that you're passing on in order to get a guy that's going to give you immediate benefits, but it's going to hurt you long term. That's the thing that matters the most, not the fact that you have to pay him. Being 29 doesn't help him either, right? But again, if you're trying to win now, 29 doesn't matter. It doesn't factor into the conversation because if he's 29, which he is, you're still getting at least 4 damn good years of Myles Garrett. His skill set isn't going to fall off of a cliff in the next 4 years. He'll still be bagging quarterbacks at a high rate at the age of 32, which 4 years from now, because he's going to be playing next season, age 29 season, 30 season, 31 season, 32 season. And if you're going to bring him, you would probably sign him to an extension that would get you to 32, and then there would probably be an out after that season. He's still going to be bagging quarterbacks at a high rate for the next 4 years. So that doesn't, I mean, if you want to win a Super Bowl, sometimes you got to pay the cost. He's worth it. One of the few guys that is in this league. Derek B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Myles Garrett, non-playoff teams need not apply. Trent Williams. Yeah, pretty much. Like, if I want out of Cleveland because they stink, why would I want to go to another poverty franchise that hasn't won anything or doesn't even look like they're remotely close? Like, I would have a list of teams like guys that are in his position generally do. And it does, like, if he doesn't have a no trade clause, he doesn't have any say so. But usually, like, when the Lions traded Matthew Stafford, they wanted to do right by Matthew. This is a different situation because Myles Garrett is demanding a trade, right? Whereas the Lions are like, hey, we're going to move on from you. And we're going to get something for you. And it was like a mutual parting of ways, so to speak. The Browns don't want to trade Myles Garrett. He wants out. So we don't need to do you any favors on the way out the door. We'll trade you wherever we want. So he can't go to an AFC team if I'm the Browns. So they're going to be teams like Buffalo and Kansas City, and all those teams are going to be interested. I'm not trading him to any of those teams. Are you kidding me? He's got to go to an NFC team. So that's where the conversation starts. You're essentially talking about 16 teams. And if I'm Myles Garrett, because I already know they're not going to trade me to an AFC, they're going to trade me to the Ravens. They're going to trade me in the division, right? They're going to trade me to the Bills. They're going to trade me to the Jets or any other team that they may have to see twice a year, right? They'll trade me to an NFC team, one team that they won't have to see, but every other, 4 years or so, 3 years, depending on, where you finish in standings and so forth and so forth. And then if I'm Myles Garrett, I shrink that pool to playoff teams. And then I shrink it even further. Who's got an elite quarterback? Great program, winning history here of late, star quarterback. These are the factors I'm taking into consideration. And there are only probably a handful of teams in the NFC. Washington, Philadelphia, Detroit, San Francisco, Dallas, Green Bay. These are the teams that he should be interested in, that he would be interested in. Dallas is too cheap. They'd never do it. They'd never give up what it takes to do it. But Green Bay would be interested. That's the kind of team that would definitely go all in on a situation like this. Philadelphia, we know they're all in on any situation like this. Washington should be all in on a situation like this. Like, these are the teams that think they got a chance to win a Super Bowl. San Francisco hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. They've already proven that they're willing to go in for a pass rusher, trading for a Chase Young at the trade deadline. They've already shown that if an opportunity presents itself, they're not going to shy away from that opportunity. They may be able to throw a Deebo Samuel into the trade, right, to sweeten the pot. Like, it always helps if you've got a player that you can, fork over to help facilitate the trade, right? They've got that in San Francisco. We've got that in Washington. So, we'll see what happens. But my guess is the Browns aren't going to trade him. But if I'm Myles Garrett, non-playoff teams need not apply. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Because even if he doesn't have a no-trade clause and he doesn't have any say-so, he can tell the team, I'm not going to re-sign with you. I'm not signing an extension with you if you trade for me. That's how you negate a team that you don't want to go to. That's how you cancel them out. Is you tell them beforehand, you can't, nobody wants to give up 2 1s and 2 2s for a guy that's only going to be there for a year. or 2, right? Nobody wants to do that. That's bad business. So if I tell you I'm not signing an extension with you, well, shit, I'm not trading for you then. So if you're Myles Garrett, you can control the situation that way. That's your leverage. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, John Perez, right? Just heard the Suns are listening to KD offers. I don't doubt that, but I don't think that's going to take place. But we'll talk about that tonight. That's a conversation for tonight. Because like I said, we're going to have an association conversation tonight for sure. But they want Jimmy Butler. That's what they want. And in trading away KD is counterproductive if your ultimate goal is to try to win a championship, which the Suns have pretty much mortgaged their future somewhat. We'll talk more about that later on tonight. JLG, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JLG writes, you made an interesting point on Myles Garrett. We have to ask ourselves, will one or both of our next 2 first-round picks be close to a Myles Garrett? That we already know the answer to that. Like, well, we don't. I can't say that we know the answer to that definitively, but we know the answer to that, though. Like, if we end up drafting where we feel like we should be drafting the next 2 years, let's just say the next 2 years, you know, it's going to take a first-round pick in the next 2 drafts and a second-round pick in the next 2 drafts. Are you getting Myles Garrett at 29? That's where we sit right now. Are you getting Myles Garrett at 32? That's where we hope to be sitting next year. Probably not. Probably not. You know, the best of the best that we've seen in this league stands for maybe Chris Jones. I don't think Chris Jones was I don't even think Chris Jones was a first-round pick. If he was, however, it was obviously a late first-round pick for the Chiefs. But I think he was more of a second or third-round pick, was Chris Jones. But generally speaking, havoc wreakers along the defensive line, interior or, you know, edge rushers, generally are top 15 picks. Generally speaking, again, it's not always the case, but you'll find the rare example outlier of a guy that ends up being, you know, super productive and a difference maker outside of the top 15, outside of the first round. It's rare, but it happens. But for the most part, you want one of those guys that we look at as Hall of Fame, a future Hall of Famer. You want one of those guys that's a destructive, havoc-wreaking player that can destroy an entire game by himself. Generally, those are top 15 picks, man. From an edge rushing standpoint, those are top 10 picks. From a defensive tackle perspective, those are top 15 picks. So I don't think you're going to find a Myles Garrett anywhere in the neighborhood of where we'll be drafting more likely than not the next 2 years. Again, how bad do you want it? All right. How bad do you want it? 16 Devil Dot. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, pass, at that price, we have too many holes. And that's devil's advocate, right? Is if you're not willing to talk about 2 1s and 2 2s, then what are we talking about? 3 might have been a bit extreme, but again, I told you, if Myles Garrett becomes available, I think you're going to see the biggest bidding war we've ever seen in NFL history. If he's made available, if teams know that they can have Myles Garrett, you start pitting teams against one another. I think the price gets to 3 1s. Personally. Now, all 1s are not created equal, right? If the Raiders are offering you, not Raiders, that's not a good example because that's still on in the AFC. Let's say the Arizona Cardinals or some other, you know, poverty franchise, a team that doesn't win, and they don't give a shit about what Myles Garrett wants. If you want out, you don't get to pick and choose where you go. You want out, we're giving you an out. No, he doesn't want to go to Arizona. It's not where he wants to go. I don't give a shit if that's where he wants to go. Now, again, if you're Myles Garrett, here's your card that you can play. I'm not signing an extension with you, Arizona. Don't trade for me. And if I'm Arizona and he says that to me, I'm not trading for him. So he can, like, it goes both ways, but ultimately, all, first round picks, all second round picks are not created equal. If you got the choice between the 11th pick, which again, going to be tough because if he wants to go to good teams, all these teams should be drafting in the 20s and later, right? Like, I can't imagine them netting a team that has a top 15 pick and might have one next year too. It's just hard for me to fathom that. But all picks are not created equal, obviously, because there's a big difference between the 15th pick in the draft and the 27th pick in the draft. And if you're picking 15th this year, you might be picking, 11th next year or 8th next year. So anyway, that factors in too. Like, I'm trying to project if you're going to suck next year because I want that pick to be as high as possible. But that's devil's advocate is, nope, don't want to do that. We got too many holes. We got too many other things that we need to address. Don't want to give up the draft capital. Don't want to give up the cap space to devote to one player. Let's go in a different direction. Elf Life. Been a member for 7 months. Really appreciate you. Who writes? Myles Garrett for Jaden Daniels. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Every team in the league wants a quarterback. Quarterback supersedes anything else on the field. JP Lavecchio. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JP writes, Luke McCaffrey is 23. Ben Simmons is 22. They were the two youngest players on our roster. De'Ami Brown developed well as a third-round pick. Thoughts on their future? I feel good about the young guys. Like, so many fans want to give up on players so quickly, right? I'm not even giving up on Brandon Coleman as a contributor. I just think he's a guard. I don't think he's a tackle. I made that abundantly clear from the jump. I didn't think he was a tackle. He was a guard. But I said, you know how I feel? I'm always going to give you an opportunity to prove to me that you can before I say that you can't. Well, he proved to me relatively early on that he's not cut out for tackle work. But if you go back, and I've already challenged you guys to do this, if you go back to his draft phone call from Adam Peters said, you're going to be a good player that's going to be able to help us somewhere along the offensive line. He never specified, but he said, I'm going to give you, you're going to give you a shot at tackle. But he said, we feel good about you up and down that line. So somewhere you're going to help us. I think that somewhere is guard. And I do think they're going to be able to develop him. And I do think they're going to be able to develop Luke McCaffrey. And I do think they're going to develop Ben Sinnott. And these players are going to be just fine. Just fine. I've talked about this already. We have a tremendous coaching staff. They're teachers. So when you have good teachers, when you have guys that can teach the game, players develop. They get better. It wasn't an accident that we took a roster that was very faulty, holes everywhere, and we maximized that roster. Yes, Jaden Daniels, a massive reason as to why that took place. Absolutely. You'd be a damn fool if you didn't state him as reasons 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as to why that took place. But right after that, you have to go straight to the coaching staff. For the development of those players, for the usage of those players, for putting players in the best positions to succeed, that's all coaching. It's not a surprise. It's not a secret, right? It's not that De'Ami Brown played his best football of his career, and it's not even close in the first year of this group. He's been in the league 4 years, and he's at no point looked that good for that stretch of a time. It's not an accident. It's not an accident that Andrew Wiley, his first 2 years here in Washington, a sieve. Matter of fact, a sieve. His first year, in Washington, he was a sieve. He signed a 3-year deal, First year, he was awful. We were like, he can't start at right tackle. I don't know about you. Andrew Wiley was not a problem this year. Was he great? No. But he was the least of our worries on the offensive line. There were few instances where we went, oh my God, Andrew Wiley again. Maybe happened 2 or 3 times this year, as opposed to the 13 or 14 times it happened the year before. You think that's an accident? No, it's not an accident. So when I tell you that coaching matters, and I'm confident that the young guys that they drafted, including a Javonte John Baptiste, including a Jordan McGee, these are guys that I think are going to be good contributors for this team. They may not be stars, but they're going to be solid contributors. I'm holding out hope that Jordan McGee can turn into a star, though. I think Jordan McGee has a chance to be really good. Tizzy Bang, been a member for 39 months. Salute to you. Throwbacks with the spear and the dark burgundy and gold got to be it. That's the one for me. I love the yellows with the red R. Those are crispy. They're clean. They're dope. But it's got to be the dark burgundies. That shit ain't even burgundy. That's maroon, bro. Like, that shit's so dark. And you got the spear on the side. That's the one. That gives you no imagery of like R or any of that. It's just a spear, bro. That's the one. You could put Washington right on the front where it said Redskins on the old one. Put Washington right there in them same letters. That's the one. That's the one. All right. That's the one that's gonna make everybody go crazy. That's the one. CGM 87. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, amazing what they did in year one when Campbell, Taylor, others took 2 to 3 years. Speaking of B-ball, fire Keith, could get better coach on Timu. That's Ted for you. Hey, look. I'm telling you right now, the turnaround that we saw is not normal, obviously. Like, I don't have to explain that to you. What they were able to do in year one, phenomenal. It set the bar very high moving forward. All right. If I would tell you there's a drawback to that, is that it accelerates the process. Because even though it took Campbell, the 2 years, right? They didn't like finally realize the vision until year 3, right? Year one, I think they were a 3-win team, if I'm not mistaken. Year 2, they were 9-8, but they started 0-6, right? But they finished the season like gangbusters, including a big win on the road at Green Bay to end their season. And the next year they were able, but the beauty of them doing it in that manner is that it allowed them to build the roster, implement all the things that they wanted to, so that when they finally got good, it was sustainable, right? Doing it the way we did it, there's still an abundance of holes on this roster. And now the expectations are through the roof. And if you don't fill those holes adequately, the team could take a step back. Now, the biggest difference between us and Detroit is we got one of them ones and they don't at quarterback. Now, you talk about Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. Their ascension essentially went with Joe Burrow, right? Like, while Burrow was really solid in his rookie season, they still didn't have enough around him and he got hurt. They still weren't good, though. Like, even if he doesn't get hurt, right? They weren't good that year. It wasn't until they fortified the offensive line, they drafted Jamar Chase, that's when they started to take off, right? So, but expectations hit after that. They went to the Super Bowl, right? They went to the Super Bowl that next year. So now the expectations are through the roof. So now you got to meet those expectations and hopefully exceed them. But having one of them ones at quarterback, it accelerates everything. Then you throw a really good coaching staff on top of that, and that's how you do, a great front office that was able to go out. Like they were almost batting 1,000 from a free agency standpoint. Yeah, there were some misses in there. Obviously, you can't win them all, right? Obviously, there were some misses in there, but the hits were so resounding and loud that it drowned out the few misses that existed. I mean, think about this. How many times have you seen a team who had no all-pro players the year before have 4 all-pro players and all 4 of them be free agents that you brought in? When's the last time you saw that happen? That's insane, bro. I mean, what are we talking about? That's insane. That's insanity. So, yeah. I trust this group. And like I said, they pushed almost every right button last year. That's what got us in the position that we were in the NFC Championship game. They pushed every right button. We'll talk about some ball later on this evening, though. Pause. JV Lavecchio, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling it up. Who writes, if we got a Paulson Adebo or a Charvarius Ward, could you see Mike Samer still going back into the slot? I think most of us assume that's going to be the case. I don't anticipate him staying outside. Like, they want a bigger, longer, faster corner out there. Pause. We understood that he was put out there out of necessity, but by no means is that where they anticipate him staying. They're going to address corner this year, and I think they would prefer a veteran corner. Doesn't mean you still don't draft a young corner and try to develop him. Like, in a perfect world, you just do it like the Texans. And you know, they got Kamari Lassiter in the 2nd round last year out of Georgia. He's already a lockdown corner. Already. And he's across from Derek Stingley, who's about to get paid and become the highest paid corner in the league, worth every single penny. And he himself is a lockdown corner. They can play man coverage on the outside. And they got the safety from USC who is what was it? Bullock? Kalen Bullock? Like, their secondary is stupid. They got Caleb Bullock, in the 3rd round last year out of SC, 2nd, 3rd round? So, like, that's how you would prefer to do it. Caleb Bullock had, 4 interceptions last year? Kamari Lassiter had about 5 or 6. Texas have one of the youngest, most talented secondaries in football. When you throw in Jalen Petrie, I'm oh my God. That's how you would prefer to do it, but does it work out that way usually? No, it doesn't usually work out that way. So, again, we'll see what they decide to do. Whether they decide to go the young route, because they could get them a corner back into the 1st round this year and look to start him. But I think we'll have a better understanding after we see what they do in free agency. That'll tell us all we need to know. If they go out and they sign personally, Paulson Adebo is a pass interference magnet. I don't want another one of those. I don't want another one of those. Guys that grab before they even try to, figure out what the hell's going on. I take Charvarius Ward, though. And being that Adam Peters has a working relationship and a history with him, being that Mooney Ward just came from San Francisco, I wouldn't be shocked if that's the direction they went in, personally. But we'll see. Either way, my money is on Frozone going inside. My money's on him returning to the slot where they drafted him to play. I think they want him blitzing. They want him to be a presence because he tackles. They want him closer to the line of scrimmage. So I think he's going to go inside. Black Al B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Black Al B writes, what it do, Lou? What's going on, Black Al B? on your should you want a QB list, I think the Cards are on that list. Gannon is probably tired of Murray's hero ball bullshit. Yeah, but I don't think like Kyler just got an extension with probably 2 years ago now. I don't see Kyler going anywhere. And until you can find someone better, you're kind of stuck. And look, you don't have to love Kyler's work ethic off the field, antics on it, but he's still a hell of a lot better than most of the quarterbacks in the NFL. And so, and he can do things that a lot of quarterbacks can't do. And so until you can find someone that can at least give you some of what he can give you, I can't see them making a move. You just try to continue to improve the roster around him, I think is what they're going to continue to do. You probably got to have at least, for me, you got to have at least 2 full seasons of if this dude not getting it done. Like mentally, he doesn't get it and he's not getting it done. They don't have that yet with their head coach, Jonathan Gannon. Like, remember, Murray was injured practically 2/3 of that first year with Gannon. He got hurt. So Murray didn't come back till when? Probably like week 12 of his first season as the head coach there in Arizona. So he's really only had 1 real season with him. And, you know, they were in the mix for most of the season. They were in the mix. So this will be a big one, though. This will be a big season. I can't see them, like, they're not in that want a quarterback category yet. They're not where the Colts are. They're not where the Rams are, the Steelers. They need a quarterback, really, but they're not in that conversation of a team with a veteran that you should be still looking for the future potentially. But they could be next year. They could be next year. John Perez, my guy, JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? I don't blame Garrett for asking out. Browns are an idiot franchise that doesn't know what the F they're doing. Everything they do fails. It seems like it. It seems like it. They can't get right. They're one of those franchises that just doesn't seem to be able to get out of their own way. And it's unfortunate because everything that like you said, everything that they do, it seems like it kind of blows up in their face. So, you know, we'll see what happens. I keep racking my brain. I think. So I know we only had 2 Pro Bowlers. It was Terry and it was Jaden. And then I think Bobby ended up taking somebody's spot. My guess would be like a Zach Bond or somebody who ended up, you know, playing in the Super Bowl. But all pros. Wasn't Terry one of them? I'm just trying to think. I know Eckler, Louvu, and Wagner were all pros. I'm trying to think of that 4th person. I know it wasn't Jaden. And we didn't have any other free agents. It had to be Terry. So I think I might have misspoke when I said 4 free agents. I think 3 of them were free agents, and then Terry was the other one. Because I keep trying to think of who the 4th one would have been. It wasn't Dante Fowler Jr., obviously. And he's the only other guy that put up numbers that would get you in that conversation. So had to be those 3. And then Terry had to be the 4th. Because Jaden wasn't an all-pro. So I think that's that. I just keep trying to think in my head about who that 4th guy would have been. After I said it, I was like, is it 4 or is it 3? I know we had 4 all-pros, though. Anyway, I digress. Brandon Davis. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Brandon writes, I've always hated the mustard yellow pants. Go back to the 90s, white tops, burgundy pants with the stripe, and the burgundy tops, white pants with the stripe. A lot of people echo your sentiments. I don't know if everyone is in agreement, however. Some people like the, you know, gold bottoms. I myself am one that I like the gold bottoms. I have no issues with them. Should those be a part of the standard package? No, they shouldn't. But should you be allowed to wear those whenever you see fit? Yeah. And again, I said this at the top, how I would go about it is you're allowed to have, I think, 5 different uniforms in the NFL. You're allowed a throwback, 2 alternates, and then your 2 standard, uniforms. I would like to see them go back to the traditional look. Burgundy, white tops, burgundy bottoms, burgundy tops, white bottoms, right? So those are your standard 2 uniform combinations. If you want to go with the alt look, I think the Commanders' current burgundy tops, gold bottoms, fine by me, right? Fine by me. All black alts, fine by me. So those are your 2 alt outfits, right? Or uniforms. You don't need anything, and then because you could play around with the look, like you go all white, like white tops, white bottoms, and they don't consider that. That's just a uniform switch, right? That they don't consider that like a separate uniform. Like Cincinnati can wear like 50 different combinations. You can wear a black top, black bottom, black top, orange bottom, black top, white bottom, orange top, orange bottom, orange top, black bottom, orange top, white bottom. Like they could do that. Like I go white. Like they can do that. They got like 50 different combinations that they can put together. So those aren't alt uniforms. They're just different color combinations. We could do that with the all whites, right? So you don't need an alt white. Just like you could wear burgundy on burgundy. But the gold pants only look good with burgundy tops. They don't look right with white tops. So I would use that as a alt uniform. So that's how I would do it. But there are a lot of people that are traditionalists like yourself who don't care for the gold bottoms at all. Stick to the script, right? Championship look. White tops, burgundy bottoms, stripes on the side. Burgundy tops, white bottoms, stripe down the side. I think we're going to get back to that, or some semblance of that. I think that's where they're headed. I like the gold bottoms. So I would like them to incorporate that somewhere in the mix. But that's just me. Again, that's not for everybody. Brandon Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? By the way, the white numbers with the gold outline on the burgundy tops, those mustard yellow numbers are horrible. Let me try to see if I can make sense of what you're saying. By the way, the white numbers with the gold outline on the burgundy tops, those mustard yellow numbers are horrible. Okay, I see what you're saying with the current Commanders get up. I actually think it's clean because it makes the uniform seamless. The lack of the white integration with the Commanders' current, gold bottom, burgundy tops, I think are clean because it omits white. It's pretty much all burgundy and all gold. And I think that's why they're so clean. When you start adding in a bunch of different colors, white, for instance, in that particular, it just, to me, it changes the product, the way that it looks. That's why I think it's so clean. They look way better than the ones we wore when Bruce Allen was here, when he reintroduced the gold pants. The Commanders look is way cleaner than that. The white numbers are cool when you wear the white bottoms. The white numbers look out of place when you wear gold bottoms, if that makes sense. Twin D, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Twin D, writes, hey, LT, what's up, Twin D? Right after the game versus the Falcons, I asked you if you would kick the tires on Kyle Pitts. However, I didn't hear your response. Thoughts? I don't know, man. there's something off with Kyle Pitts. There's a reason why he hasn't had a better season than his first year in the league. Now, my guess, if you're a Kyle Pitts stan, would be, well, look at his quarterbacks since his first season in the league. He had Matt Ryan that first year, and it's been a steady decline every year after. I think he had Matt Ryan year one, and then I think they might have traded Matt Ryan his second year, because that was the year where we debated they should have taken Justin Fields, let him sit behind Matt Ryan for that first year, and then moved on from Matt Ryan thereafter. But they wanted to do right by Matt, and so they took the tight end, and it was dumb because the next year I think they ended up trading Matt Ryan to the Colts. Anyway, but after that it was a shit show. Even if Matt Ryan was there the next year, he was declining, and then they ended up trading him to Indy, soon thereafter. Then they went through the whole situation with Desmond Ridder, and then Heineke got some run a little bit, and it was a mess. And then they eventually got Kirk Cousins. That was ass. And so you could argue he just hasn't had great quarterbacking. I think there's a mixture with him and his work ethic being called into question, and he doesn't really block in the run game, and so he's somewhat one-dimensional. He's not a great route runner, from what I've been told. He's an athlete, and you put him in the right situation, but we've seen athletic tight ends not work out in this league before. He wouldn't be the last. He most certainly wouldn't be the first, and he's not going to be the last. So, but much like a Eric Ebron, for instance, who he was good in Detroit, but he never lived up to the hype of a top 10 pick. But he had some good years, in other places, i.e. Pittsburgh. He had a big year where he caught a bunch of touchdowns. But I don't know if he'll ever truly live up to the billing of a top 5 pick, which he was the 4th pick in the draft, if I'm not mistaken, that year. I just don't know if he'll ever live up to that. So I'm not the biggest Kyle Pitts fan, but if they wanted to kick the tires on him, you're not going to find a more athletically gifted tight end. He looks like a receiver. So he's a mismatch. So I wouldn't be opposed to it, but am I going out of my way to acquire Kyle Pitts? No. But I'd welcome him with open arms if they decided to go in that direction. But if you're going to go get a Kyle Pitts, you damn well better have a John Bates on your roster or someone of that ilk that can block, because he ain't it. He ain't it. You better have some bad mofos that can block behind him. Multiple. Because he ain't it. So, yeah, Kyle Pitts is cool. And again, you put him in the right offense. You put him in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, he'd probably be a handful. You saw what Mike Gesicki was able to do this year. Pretty sure he'd be a handful. You put him in the right offense, I bet you he'd be a problem. This could be the right offense. But, if you want an all-around guy, it ain't Kyle Pitts. Twin D, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? LT, proof that time flies. The DR trip is only 4+ months away. I'm locked in. The attendees have a lot to celebrate. Time definitely flies, and it'll be here before you know it. And so I'm gonna be pushing the trip, a ton here down the stretch. But who knew we would be celebrating all that we would be celebrating? Like this first year with the new organization, from top to bottom, essentially being revamped. What a year, and we're going to get to kind of relive all of that on the trip. So if you're out there, you want to be a part of that, to DR, link is in the description of this video and every video that I do. You can hit me up for more information, LouieTeeNetwork@gmail.com, and we can get you all squared away. But that DR trip is going to be epic for sure. And I'm glad you're going to be a part of it, Twin D. T-Money, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. T-Money writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, T-Money? Like the video, y'all. Y'all heard the man. Hit the video, like the video, subscribe for more great content. If you haven't already done so, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Would you prefer DK Metcalf or Deebo Samuel? I actually got a video coming out on the Commanders Kings channel talking about something similar to that. Not quite that one, but you're close. I would prefer DK Metcalf of those two, without question. DK Metcalf. Rocky D, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rocky D, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Garrett about to turn 30. That change anything? It changes what I would be willing to give up. And I amended my statement. I was out of pocket earlier. I was talking about him being 26 and first 4 years, and I don't know where my brain was because, like I said, I can pretty much recall the top of every draft from the last 12 years or so when I started doing this. I'll tell you who the first and second and third picks were in almost every draft. So I know he wasn't here recent. He wasn't in the 2020s, right? He was in the 20 teens, right? 2017 to be exact. So he is 30 or 29, excuse me. He just turned 29 in December. So it does change how much I would be willing to give up, but it doesn't change the fact that I'd be willing to be in those conversations as long as it took to try to get him here because of what he does. Like, if you're telling me I got to give up 2 1s and 2 2s, and that's what it would take to get Myles Garrett, what's the hesitation? Sign me up. Because you have to take advantage of Jaden Daniels' rookie contract. That is the best way to maximize his rookie contract, is to get a guy like Myles Garrett, which is why the Texans traded for Stephon Diggs, which is why the Texans signed Danielle Hunter, who is the same age. I think he was 29 last year, going on 30. They signed Danielle Hunter to a 2-year deal, because they wanted to maximize CJ Stroud's rookie contract. That's how you do it. You go after veterans that can help you win right now, because at some point, you're not going to be able to do that. When you're paying your quarterback 15, 16% of your cap, you're not going to be able to do that. And he'll be worth every single penny. So you try to maximize that by going to get Myles Garrett. Would I be willing to give up 3 1s? Probably not. Not at 30. But I'd do the 2 1s and the 2 2s and a 4 or 5 in a heartbeat. And I'd throw in a player if I had to. Do that in a heartbeat. That extra one, that's the one that hurts you. That third one. Because of the age factor. You're not going to get as much from him. And at some point, you got to start trying to, get some upper tier talent to replenish the ones that you didn't get. You have to draft your ass off to overcome. That's what the Rams have done. You got to give the Rams credit. They drafted their asses off because they mortgaged their future for that one Super Bowl. They got it, but it came at a cost. And so they had to draft guys in the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th and the 6th and the 7th round, and they had to hit, and they did. And that's why they never fully tanked. They always stayed afloat because they hit in those mid to late rounds. LT, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. LT writes, how many playoff losses to Hurts till y'all change head coach? What kind of a question is that, LT? Like, you beat us in the playoffs once. That's it. One time. Do me a favor. You worry about the Chiefs this week. How many losses to Mahomes in the playoffs? How many losses to the Bucks in the playoffs before you change coaches? Wouldn't that be a dumb question for me to ask you? How many times you lose in the playoffs to the Bucks before you change head coaches? How many times you lose in the playoffs to Mahomes before you change coaches? What's your answer, LT? Quick, think fast. What's your answer? Dumb as hell, right? Yeah, I know. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this midday edition of the Command Post Live. Josh Harris said a couple of other things that were of note. Talking about the stadium, they kind of tried to pigeonhole him into DC, and he kind of explained to them, I needed DC to be at the table. They needed to have a seat at the table because we all know that's where he wants the stadium to be. But they tried to shit on Maryland in the process, and kind of pigeonhole him into DC. And I thought he did a really good job of trying to stay diplomatic, even though he don't want the stadium to be in Maryland. And he's like, yo, Maryland's been good to us. He wants to keep that door open, obviously, because things could fall through in DC. And they definitely don't want to have the stadium in Virginia. So I think your two options are either you go back to Maryland or you have it in DC, right? So, because they don't want to move too far away from the core of their base. So, you know, DC is the best of both worlds. It's in the middle of everything. It's in the middle of VA and Maryland. You can bring everybody together. So, he talked about that. He talked about the stadium being a place that makes it tough on the opposition to come in and win. He's like, you know, I've been to a number of stadiums here over the last 2 years and seen the difference it makes when you've got, you know, a home field advantage, and we're looking to create that. You know, these are all, you know, things that you want to hear as a fan. So he talked about that. You know, he talked about his input in the operation. He's like, look, I'm learning, man. I'm just trying to learn. He's like, you know, I want to be at the point where if I see something that I don't agree with, I can speak up about it because I'm informed and I know. But, you know, right now I'm just kind of in the information taking, you know, phase where he's kind of taking in information, figuring everything out, learning on the fly, because this ain't like being an NBA or an NHL owner, right? This levels to this shit. And the NFL is at the top of the pecking order. So he's learning, and he talked about all of that. But the biggest takeaways from the presser, name's not changing. He didn't say ever, but it ain't changing no time soon, because the biggest thing is the stadium. And that's what we talked about. That's what, you know, Bram Weinstein talked about. The stadium is the most important thing. That is the only thing they're really concerned about with right now, as far as off the field. On the field, they're a jersey change is coming. It is coming. And it's going to look more like our past than it has this present look. And I think that's going to be music to a lot of fans' ears. And I'd even take it a step further. Not only bring, you know, the championship look back, white tops, burgundy bottoms, burgundy tops, white bottoms, but also incorporate a throwback. All the while still keeping a couple of alt uniforms in the burgundy tops, gold bottoms, and the all blacks, right? So I think we're going to see a move, a shift back to our traditional look. And I think that's music to most Commanders fans' ears. So Myles Garrett, what says you? He's 29. He'll be 30 next December. Browns say they're not going to trade him. I don't think they're going to trade him. But there's a lot of time between now and April, or even May, if they decide they don't want another first-round pick this year, but they'd rather have another first-round pick starting next year's draft, 2026 draft. Whatever the case may be, a lot of time between now and April or now and May. Things can change and change very rapidly. If they do, and let's say the price is 2 1s, 2 2s, and a 4, and if we got to sweeten the pot with a player, i.e. Duran or Jonathan Allen, those are probably your best assets to trade at this point. More likely than not, Jonathan Allen. Would you do it? 29 years old, in the prime of his career still, got another 4 probably strong years left of quality football. What says you? Are you willing to do 2 1s, 2 2s, a 4, and possibly a player thrown in at the chance to get Myles Garrett? Or are you like, nah, it's too much for a 29-year-old, you know, pass rusher who is up for a contract in 2027? You trade for him, you're going to extend him. You're not trading 2 1s and 2 2s for a guy that you're just going to let walk after a couple of years. It's the same thing we said about Marshawn Lattimore. Like, they're not extending him, but they didn't trade a 3rd-round pick for a guy that they weren't, like, some people were like, man, he's washed. Get rid of him. Like, you're crazy. This wasn't a trade just for this year. It was a trade because he's got a couple of years left on his deal. They're trading for not just this year, but for the long haul. Same thing for Myles Garrett. If you trade for him, there's no way you're going to trade him without extending him. That's something to keep in mind. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I hope to see you guys a little bit later on this evening when we're going to talk the association. Bombshell of a trade, blockbuster deal, one we've never seen before, one that we'll probably never see again. We got to talk about it. I was going to do it last night, and I was just like, I'm going to just enjoy my weekend. And I'm glad I waited because then the De'Aaron Fox trade happened. So anyway, we're going to talk about the association tonight. Hopefully you'll join me. We got lots to discuss. Anyway, I digress. I'll see you guys later. And we'll be talking again. We'll have more command posts, more shows. Anytime something comes up of note, you'll see this face invading your space. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. I'll see you guys next time. Peace. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. See y'all on the other side. Have a good one.